Well, good evening, good morning, and good night, everybody. Welcome back to FOJC. Tonight is our very first Saturday night live broadcast. Well, guess what, folks? The first book review we've done on Saturday Night Live. Welcome back to the channel, folks. Book reviews is where it's at. This is, I think, our third or fourth book review we've done. And how fitting it was to do it here on Saturday Night Live with the weather going on as it is, the icebergs, the glaciers, 50 foot of ice and 20 foot of snow every which way you look when it comes to the east side of America. And it's happening right now in the local area here and snowing in Tennessee. So welcome all walks of life to Saturday Night Live Book Review. I'm your co-host, Brian Reese of Visual Disturbance. We are back here again, but we want to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, the walking encyclopedia. You don't have to have Google. You don't have to have any kind of search engine. You don't have to have any type of AI mechanism. The one and only, the host of FOJC. Welcome, everybody. Welcome him with open arms. David Carrico, how the heck are you? Welcome back, my friend. Saturday Night Live here on FOJC. I can't believe we're here, but we're doing this thing. How the heck are you, David?
Well, I'm very good, Brian. Thank you very much. And it's good to be here with you all on a Saturday night. Good to see our rowdy friends in the chat. The chat is filling up, and we've got a very, very timely broadcast for this evening. And we're going to be doing a book review, and we're going to be doing looking at the points that this book brings out. And of course, we're going to be looking at what it means to us today. This book that we're going to be looking at tonight is Weather Wars and Unnatural Disasters by Stephen Quayle. And this was written in 2015. You know, this book is 10 years old. And of course, there's been things that have happened technologically and so forth in the last 10 years. But even at that, it's probably the best book out there on this topic. A very, very good book. We give it high marks, and we're going to be going through it tonight and applying it to the situation right now. And we are certainly at a time where we need to think about the reality of weather manipulation. And Brian, what are your thoughts here as you approach this topic? I think it's certainly a very timely one for us tonight.
Well, David, when I think about this and the things that I've learned the last 15 years plus and looked at the little spray, like I always say on Visual Disturbance, there's something in the sky. A lot of people laugh about it. We're going to talk about it tonight. A lot of people act like it doesn't exist, but there's certain things in the sky that changes the dynamic on the face of the earth. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen things that just make you go, when you're looking up at the sky. And you're seeing forecast meteorologists do these predictions. And this last one where we had this huge ice storm, the meteorologist out there all over the place completely overshot it. It wasn't even accurate to any means whatsoever. But then we started shifting. We getting ice here, ice there, people without power. We're looking at something here that's ancient. And we're looking at something here that when you look at the biblical narrative, that there's nothing new under the sun. And there's powers that be that are bringing in these powers and these forces and masquerading as, well, it's chemtrails or it's comtrails or it's just a backflow of the air particulates coming from the engine. All this excuses. And then down here on the face of the earth, we're getting hit with tornadoes during snowstorms, freeze quakes, whatever type of ideology you want to come down the pike with, and they come up down with these terminologies that makes no sense. We got exploding trees, nothing I've ever heard in my life until 2026. It's phenomenal, David. I mean, we're living in the twilight zone. It's like cowboys and Indians with overload information and disinformation off the highest order I've ever seen in my life. And we have to say, we have to check ourselves and say, look, the weather is not normal. There's something being used against us. We have to wake up and literally evaluate it. We can't just be listening to some other man or woman and saying, well, they know all this information. Well, folks, explain what's going on in the skies when it's literally sprayed so bad and all of a sudden we'll have this apocalyptic type of snow, apocalyptic type of drought, apocalyptic type of flooding. Unbelievable, David. Unbelievable. This is where I'm at. I think this is a very timely broadcast, like you said, David. People are talking. People are finally waking up. When snow sticks to the ground and the road and the salt truck goes back and forth 24/7 and it doesn't come off because the temperatures are so cold, and then the weather phenomenon above, we're I can't imagine what's going to happen the rest of this winter. It's unbelievable, David.
And I'm just going to come out and say it here at the outset that I believe that this storm that we're in the midst of now, it was absolutely a engineered event. I believe that it was. And I'm going to be giving you reasons why I'm thinking that throughout the broadcast. We're going to be asking for a little input from some of you on some things tonight. We're going to throw out some things to you we need to think about. But let's get into the book. Page 44. And here again, the book is Weather Wars and Natural Disasters by Stephen Quayle. And on page 44, the heading is Who is Thawing the Arctic? Who is thawing the Arctic? And he writes, what makes all the melting ice so instructive is the method which the Russians proposed for melting the ice cap during the Cold War, as the U.S. and Soviets discussed working together on such a project. The Russian plan was simple and cheap. Ice and snow would be covered with soot, which would absorb sunlight, gradually heating up and slowly melting away the ice and snow. Best of all, only a thin layer of soot would do the trick, because as ice melted, the soot would settle down on newly exposed ice and then melt it at will. One might also speculate if this was one of the outcomes of the U.S. Air Force's experimentation with using black carbon in the mid-1950s. Now, here's a report from NASA. And, whenever we hear NASA, we take it with a grain of salt, and maybe with a grain of soot this time. But, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So here we go. This is what NASA says. It says scientists located significant accumulations of black carbon soot in the Arctic region. This soot may contribute to the warming of a region that has already seen rapidly increasing temperatures in recent years. This research offers additional evidence black carbon generated through the process of incomplete combustion may have a significant warming impact on the Arctic, says Dorothy Koch of Columbia University and NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Now, Brian, number one, do you think that it's feasible that perhaps even the United States and Russia are still engaging in melting the Arctic with black soot? And if so, why? Why do they want to melt the ice in the Arctic?
Well, David, the other day is about a week ago. They have admitted that they have laser weaponry, that they're literally using it. Okay, so if we look at frequencies and temperature changes and things that's from above, and to get to your question, I think, David, just my, coming to a conclusion on really studying this and going into the days of World War II and looking at what we really got going on here, I think there's ancient technology that they're possibly trying to melt down and get to something that is of an ancient source, and they're kind of just propagating it and kind of bouncing ideas around and then telling you a narrative, telling you something that's legitimate, telling you that's something that's scientific, but there's like 10 other different angles to the mission, to the objective, to the so-called mission that they're supposed to be able to turn out. So my opinion on this, they can absolutely do that, David. They can absolutely do it. They've been propagating it, putting in subliminal messaging in movies. They have been literally tuning us to believe narrative after narrative after narrative, but they have told us to look down at screens but not look up and literally process manipulation. manipulation. We've talked about this on other programs we did not too long ago on Sunday Night Live, talking about weather modification, earthquake activity. David, 1,000%, 100%, just to answer your question, they can absolutely do it. Russia and America, all these things, they're trying to get ancient knowledge that's from beneath the ice. It's got to be that.
Yeah, I believe that. And another possible motive would be billions of dollars. The green machine is raking in billions of dollars because of their global warming scenario. So if they can actually warm the Arctic, they can make billions and billions of dollars off of it, as they are. So who is warming the Arctic? On page 69, the fifth chapter in this book is about nanotech. And actually, and by the way, all the way back to the 70s, Lyndon Johnson, he said, whoever can control the weather will control the world. There was admitted weather manipulation. They were cloud seeding during the Vietnam War. This is no secret. This is public knowledge. This has been going on for a long, long time. And now, in the fifth chapter of this book, he discusses the use of nanotech in cloud seeding. And this is a research paper that was presented at an Air Force conference called Owning the Weather in 2025. And this is what it says. It says, with regard to seeding techniques, improvements in the materials and delivery methods are not only plausible but likely. Smart materials based on nanotechnology are currently being developed with gigaops computer capability at their core. They could adjust their size to optimal dimensions for a given fog seeding situation and even make adjustments through the process. They might also enhance their dispersal qualities by adjusting their buoyancy, by communicating with each other, by steering themselves within the fog. They will be able to provide immediate and continuous effectiveness in feedback by integrating with the larger sensor network. Now, Mr. Quayle gives us a good definition of what nanotech is. He says nanotechnology is the science of making microscopic machines. Nanos is the Greek word for dwarf, and teke means art or craft, while logos means word or discourse. Now, here's the question. Here's the question we want to consider, and this is what he proposes as a legitimate concern. And he writes this. He says, if it weren't bad enough that nanotechnology might be harnessed as a weather modification weapon, there is also a worry that such machines might escape and carry out their programs in areas where they don't belong. In short, nanotechnology might easily become the real-world equivalent of computer viruses, only instead of traveling over the internet and attacking an unfortunate victim's hard drive, these would be lost in our environment, transforming the weather. Is it possible, Brian, that nanotechnology that they are using in cloud seeding could begin to act independently or be controlled by its creator for nefarious purposes? Could this be like interjecting a computer virus into our world?
David, I'm glad you brought this up because I've got a slide here talking about the black soot that we just referred to a few moments ago. And David, I mean, this is off the cuff, folks. We didn't rehearse anything. This is just literally from my perspective what you just read there, David. I remember reading just recently it was like a technological advancement, some kind of a sci-fi blog or forum. And to answer your question, to talking about the black soot, the nanotechnology, the ice, and then relating to this slide here, I wrote down here some data points. Mechanism of darkening ice absorbs significantly more solar radiation than reflected white ice, creating a localized warming loop. So let me explain. On the scientific so-called forum that I read a couple weeks ago, they're claiming that when you freeze ice, you can form it. But if it like pops it, you can form it in place. It has electrical charge, like some type of electrical charge combustion type of mechanism. If you're able to keep it intact, a certain temperature of ice. Okay, so let's have a hypothetical going back to what we just talked about earlier with Russia and America and billions of dollars investment, ancient technology and what have you. What if it's actually not? What if it's actually they're protecting something that is radiating a signature, and the ice is what helps the machine or something underneath the earth? The gray, sorry, I almost said it. The black carbon, this so-called nanotechnology, absorbs, like I'm reading here, this solar radiation reflecting with white ice, and then maybe it does something to the climate, right? Because we've talked about Antarctica many times and other places that are of icy areas that used to be tropical. So what if, David, it's an energy source, it's a hub, it's an ancient knowledge when we talked about just on our Greenland show on Sunday Night Live a couple weeks back. What if there's something there that's of an ancient source and they use ice and use nanotech in this black soot? What if, David, this is all coming down in information overload, but what if it's something they've done from back to antiquity? What if, David? What if?
Yeah, and black soot is something been around for a long time. And that is, and there's that word that we can't say that can get your videos whacked down. And this is absolutely, I think you're right. I think you're right there, Brian. I think you're got hitting the nail right on the head. And I'm gonna read something here. He has a chapter 13 on changing the atmosphere, and I'm gonna ask some questions here. And I don't know whether I'm even going to give my opinion or not, but I'll let some of you give yours. I imagine you all can read my mind. Not that I think you're psychic, but I'm pretty obvious on these things. But in chapter 13, changing the atmosphere, he refers to Dr. Arnold Barnes of the U.S. Army's Test Technology Symposium in 1997. And this is what he said at this technological symposium by the Army. He affirmed that HARP and the use of contrail ingredients were components of the government's weather control operations. Now, just think about it. They have admitted, we're going to talk about HARP in more detail because HARP, and by the way, now there are over 100 facilities that are capable of heating the ionosphere. HARP is the largest, but there's over 100 now. That is really something to help you sleep well at night. But they are admitting that they are using HARP in connection with contrails to control the weather. Now, I'm gonna ask a question here, and I'm gonna give y'all the opportunity to weigh in the chat. And if Brian can pick up some of the answers here, I'll let him read them. But just this week, we heard President Trump, after the ice storm hit our country and was going full bore, he said, "What do you think of your global warming now? What do you think of your global warming now?" Well, my question to you in the chat tonight is, do you believe that our government would use weather manipulation for political advantage? Do you believe that our government would use weather manipulation for political advantage? It's not like maybe they can do it, maybe they can't. They absolutely can do it. They absolutely can do it. There's in the people that are wanting to put black soot to melt the ice on the Arctic to warm temperatures, these would be the people from the left that want to promote global warming. But could the powers that be now use weather manipulation to try to make global warming appear to be a hoax? What do you say, folks? Is it possible? Brian, do we have anyone weighing in with an opinion?
A lot of people said, yes, totally believe, yes. They don't care. Yes, without a doubt, yes. 100% times infinity, yes. I think they're capable of anything. Absolutely. They push the weather south. Absolutely. Yes, beyond a shadow of doubt. They regret it when there's no rain, scorching heat. Yeah, Brian already proved that the global warming was real. Seen it from my own eyes. It's real comical. Yeah, that's a whole nother saying there on my channel. But yeah, thank you, DG, or DS. Excuse me, DGS MMA. Thank you, man. But yeah, with the 100% accuracy, pretty much the poll is there, brother David. Everybody's 100% yes.
Well, I guess we're talking to the choir tonight. And I mean, when I heard President Trump say, "What do you think of your global warming now?" I said, "Aha, I see you there, little fella." So I tell you what, I'm on board with you, and I think that we pretty much are seeing this thing. And I think that people that don't see this and they see, well, we've got one side of good guys, one side of bad guys. I tell you what, with the dump of these Epstein files, and we're just getting into the looking into that, there's some dark, dark, dark evil on both sides of the aisle. And really, both sides of the aisle, they're just two sides of the same aisle, in my opinion. And the accusations that we have put forth from people that have been victimized by satanic ritual abuse, they sound much more believable after reading some of these tales that are coming out in the Epstein files. But I absolutely believe that the chemtrails and the contrails, that this is a big part of it. Now, let me ask something else here. Let's have some input from you. Before this ice storm, did any of you see chemtrailing in your area of the country? Let us know where you're from, and let us know if you saw the chemtrailing going on. There are reports from people all over the country in these areas where this happened that there were massive chemtrails. Do we have anyone in the chat, Brian, that was a witness to that?
Yes, yes, and yes. And I even raised my hand too, Brother David. I raised my hand because I can tell you right now, folks, I can assure you before the great ice apocalypse, there was like fluffy clouds looking like a well woven, sewed quilt from grandma. And it was literally packed out. And I could go outside with a t shirt and shorts on. So, hello. And then that was literally the day and a half before the great ice storm that's hit us. And we've never gotten out of the 20 plus. We haven't even gotten to 20, or haven't even got to 30 degrees around here. We're still in the zero temperatures, and that's not normal. But yeah, David, yes, 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 yes from Florida, yes from Tulsa, Alabama. Excuse me, Alabama. Excuse me, folks. I probably offended you. Oklahoma and UK, definitely yes. And Northern
Someone
Arkansas,
from the
yes.
UK?
Yep, UK's there. Yep, definitely. All kinds of folks are saying yes. We even got folks from across the water that's agreeing with us here in the States. So, David, it's worldwide. It's worldwide.
Yeah. And that's why I can say without fear of contradiction, I 100% believe that this was a engineered weather event. I believe that large portions of the United States were chemically cooled for political advantage. I absolutely believe that. That's my opinion. And for the moment, I got a right to it, and I'm going to say it. And it's obvious, it's in your face. I mean, we saw there have been so many people testifying. The people in the chat tonight, they absolutely did this. And for, and I just got to say, for the people that think, and bless your heart, I know that the left is, I mean, it's the communist revolution. The left is nothing but the communist revolution. But the people that are relaxing and saying, "Oh boy, the good guys are in power now," you need to take a strong drink of coffee. Every time I take a drink of coffee, you need to take some good strong coffee, because we need to be watching, because this was an engineered event. I totally 100% believe that. Now, let's look at a couple things here that are very disturbing, and these are just facts. On page 214, we're going to look at an actually a documented government program. This is called Project Argus, and it was done in 1958. And I'll read here from Mr. Quayle's book on page 214. It says in mid 1958, as part of a weather control project that became known as Project Argus, also sometimes referred to as Prime Argus. The U.S. Navy exploded 3 nuclear bombs high above the South Atlantic Ocean. Now, aren't they the bright lights? Let's explode 3 nuclear bombs. It says these nuclear fireballs rose into the lower regions of the Van Allen belt. Later, 2 hydrogen bombs were detonated over Johnson Island in the Pacific, again sending a nuclear fireball rising into the lower portions of the Van Allen belt. Can you believe it? Are these guys bright lights or what? Set off 3 nuclear bombs, 2 hydrogen bombs. It says the purpose of these 5 explosions was to determine what effect they might have on radio and radar transmissions. The result was outburst of EMP that unexpectedly fried some electronic circuits, demonstrating that U.S. scientists hadn't considered all the potential dangers that nuclear weapons might exhibit, much as radioactive fallout hadn't been anticipated by those exploding the first nuclear weapons. Now, boy, for me, Brian, file this under dumb and dumber. The Van Allen belt, the radiation belt that is there above our Earth, and they are exploding 3 nuclear bombs, 2 hydrogen bombs to raise a fireball up into the Van Allen belt. What's wrong with these people? These people are, they claim to be the smartest people on earth. They're dabbling with things they shouldn't even dabble with. This is just absolute insanity to me, Brian. Crazy time.
Well, David, it's just like they're doing right now. They're talking about the Golden Dome and everything that's happening right now. We just went through the last 5 years talking about mystery balloons, rockets being shot up into the Lake Erie area, Michigan. We're shooting off $400,000 rockets at some type of unidentified flying object. David, there's nothing new under the sun here in this topic here at Project Argus in 1958. I want to point a few things out. We have these bombs going off. And I'm not a scientist whatsoever, nor do I have that in my, let's just say, my resume. But when I think about these things that they're experimenting and how they're thinking, I'm not even trying to think like they think, but it's ironic to me that they're literally knocking all this off at the one time and trying to get through the Van Allen belt and do some type of, it's almost like a big experiment, like a big scientific experiment, like when we was kids making a volcano, putting baking soda in it, watching it erupt. It's almost like the same thing. But David, I kid you not, I did not, until we started putting this all together and presenting this material, about a year ago, I was going to do a presentation on this, and it's kind of awesome that you're bringing this up tonight. Let me explain. David, what if that you can go back to the 50s, the 1958 to the 1962, and there was a big increase in the population, David. Have you ever thought about it? There was a big increase in the population. Yes, right there when you're talking about these atomic bombs and everything lighting up, there was a huge influx in the population. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because we're going to be talking about this other experiment that they pulled off in 1962. But I wanted to point that out, that there was literally a burst of literally particles in the air. And like we just referred to earlier, the black soot, the particulates that they're thinking there's nanotechnology and everything. That's what they're claiming. So what was going back on in 1958, David? Wonder what was going on with the cosmological stance, the sun, the moon, everything that we've got going on right now, the aurora borealis, everything that's coming down. We got the northern lights. It used to stay in the same geographic area. Now it's all coming back down and hitting Florida and everything. I mean, this is not what it seems, folks. But Dave, what do you think about the 1958, and what do you think about the influx of the population during that time? I know it's a little bit off subject, but what do you think about the population? Not only was they manipulating the weather, manipulating things, what about the population, David?
Well, population control is something that's always intrigued the globalists. Billy Goat has made a lot of really disturbing statements about wanting to reduce the population. And this is something that could certainly do it in a hurry. And I was born in 1950. I'm a 1950 model. And I was 8 years old in 1958. Obviously, do the math. But I remember my mother telling me, and every kid loves to eat snow. Just such fun to eat snow, isn't it? But I remember my mother, and right during this time, because they were setting off, and back then the party line, well, this is nuclear testing. But there was deeper, darker things about it that we find out. They were experimenting with the Van Allen belt. And today, the very same thing needs to be told to children. Don't eat the snow. There are now chemicals coming down in the snow. These have been measured, and these have been analyzed, the chemicals that are coming down in the snow because of the cloud seeding. We had people saying that there was fog just here recently when we had this not long ago when all of these orbs were appearing. And there were people that said, well, there's fog that ain't fog. Well, it was a chemical fog. And it was absolutely this weather manipulation technology that was creating fog that is not fog. People are visibly seeing film on their automobiles that you can put your finger on, and you can swipe and see the film from these chemicals. Yes, boys and girls, don't eat the snow. But I remember, Brian, we were doing broadcasts when people were saying that, boy, there's this fog, and this fog ain't fog, and it wasn't. It was a chemical fog, and this chemical fog was tied in with the appearance of orbs. Now, this connects some more dots there, Brian.
It reminds me of the like we've talked about TV shows and movies, Stranger Things, thinking about Stephen King. I think there was a movie called what was it, The Fog, if I'm not
The
mistaken.
fog, I believe, yeah.
And I mean, David, you can see it. You can take a flashlight, you can look at it. People say, well, it's just air something about ice particles or particulates in the air. It's just water, it's just vapor. It's just condensation. Well, David, I can tell you right now, this has been going on for a while now, but I can literally contest. I can see this nasty old film all over the vehicles, all over some buildings out in the back, or little storage building, what have you. You can see a film, and it's not your traditional, let's just say, elements that we're used to having. It's not God elements. There's a man-made incorporation of something, of a diabolical plot, and you can take it for whatever it is. And people was claiming with that fog, David, they was having upper respiratory issues,
Oh,
really
yeah.
bad sick, all kinds of different things. People losing feeling in their hands, their arms, all kinds of anomalies. And people would not navigate to that. They would automatically say it's some other kind of condition. It's just typical flu or whatever it is, but it was something to do with the air. And it's interesting. I want to bring
Yeah.
this up real quick. David, I kid you not too long ago, I think it was Georgia, Oregon, and California. They was telling people to stay inside because of the air quality. They was telling people to stay inside and stay home. This was just not too
Yeah.
long ago, a few weeks back, or maybe a month ago. Think about that. Georgia, Oregon, and California. That's a huge gap for 3 states. What about the other states? Does anybody else have a warning? Oh, just don't worry about them, folks. The air quality's good. Smell it. Get you some popcorn. If you want some snow cream, go out there and get you a bucket of snow cream. Get you some nano, and just have a good time and play in it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but I remember when I was a youngster, and even up to modern times, snow cream is it's an awesome dessert. But we're gonna get
Oh,
off
yeah.
topic. But yeah, David, more diabolical information. It's unbelievable. I don't even know where we're at. I mean, the fog thing got me, and it's something they're doing experiments on us, folks. They're doing
Yeah.
something, and I can
Yeah.
kind of strategically probably tell you where it's at. I was looking somewhere in the Canadian area, and there was a place not too far from the America, and some very interesting things come out of a cave system. I'll say that. I've found on Google Earth. That's all I'm going to say. Probably too much for this broadcast and this program, but there's something going on. And that was a while back, a couple years ago. So crazy times.
Yeah. Yeah. It really, really is. It's very, very disturbing. And well, look here, and something else too that is disturbing to think about, and you got to ask yourself why. But there is a consistent pattern that the chemtrails are being sprayed over agricultural areas. And believe it or not, in Fresno, California, that was at one time a very, very rich soil for growing crops. Now in Fresno, because of this chemtrailing, the soil has been greatly damaged. And if you look at the areas where the chemtrailing is most prevalent, these are the agricultural areas of our country, which supplies much of the food of America and much of the food of the world. And a lot of there's been many, many statements that if you control the world's food supply, uh, you can control the world, obviously. But this is something that I see a pattern here, Brian, that disturbs me. And you wonder, well, who's doing this? Well, is it the Russians? Is it the United States? And by the way back in I can't remember the year, but Ahmadinejad of Iran on the floor of the United Nations accused Israel and Europe of using weather warfare to dry up the rainfall. And to this day, there's a severe shortage of rain in Iran. And there was a video that Netanyahu did that you could probably find on the internet, and he is there and he's drinking a glass of clear water, and he takes a drink and he talks to Iran about changing their ways. It's reminiscent to me of the scene in the Hunger Games where the guy's eating steak in front of the starving people. This is really wild. And if you look at the statistics, there are actually places in Iran where they're talking about the relocation of much of the population to other areas because they don't have water. And the accusations of Iran that they're being victimized with weather warfare, this is easy for me to believe. Now, my question to you, Brian, how do we sort this out? And I don't know if we even can, but we've got the Russians, we've got the United States, we've got Israel and other nations capable of this. What do we have here? Do we have different nations acting independently? Or is there a larger group or a larger hand over this whole thing that's manipulating this toward a given end?
Well, David, I'm glad you asked me that. When you think about, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, but when you think about water, think about places going up and bellying up in drought, thinking that places used to be tropical, literally a tropical landscape, and it's a desert now. I want to throw us in here, David, speaking of Russia, Mr. Putin. He made a comment, I think it was in 2016, if my memory serves me correct. He said, whoever controls the AI controls the world. So it's interesting that there's always all this water situation. We have literally water shortages, but it takes about 1 million gallons of water per day to keep an AI facility going. So let that resonate, folks, when there's abundance. And I can assure you right now, there's machines, these weather machines can make abundant of clear, clean water for the most part. And we're living in a world where there's 150-year-old pipes underneath the America that is literally corroded with all kinds of ooey gooey things. And we're trying to get off those systems. But the water could be a lot cleaner, be a lot more free. And it's not. So, David, to conclude what I'm saying here, it's all about power. It's all about what they know. It's all about whoever's pulling the strings. And I think it's a force when it comes to the fallen angels. We can talk about the celestial, the terrestrial, the every type of celestial, whatever you want to call it, the fallen angels, the seraphim, the cherubim. We got us an adversary above in the pay grade that's above all these ancient, family bloodlines. There's somebody running this ship. And here at everybody FOJC, we would probably call it the adversarial, let's just say Lucifer, Satan, and the devil playing around in the devil's advocate right now. But I would just say that, David, when we have the capability to make clean water, but there's not, it's been like that for a long time. Probably 100 years ago, we could have had clear, clean water, but they didn't. There's a thing that's called greed and power and manipulation. That's what's happened to our society. And I think all of it now, David, what they're trying to do now, I think it's all AI mechanisms. You flood the areas, and I'll just go back to this Project Argus before we get too off topic. But I wanted to ask you a question, David. It kind of goes along with what we're saying. if there's a shortage on water, but then these AI facilities have to have water, where you're building these big mega hubs, which are communicating with things above, things below, ancient things of an antediluvian sort. But I got a question for you, David. Project Argus, back then, these sites where they shot these bombs off, shot all these atomic bombs, etc. What have you ever looked on the ground and see if these areas thrived when it comes to computers? Did they thrive at the big warehouses? Did they thrive with any kind of advancements as far as, industrial stance and big corporations? Over the airwaves, these locations on the ground, did they advance? Do you know anything about that? Because I'm just asking a question, because that's where the power is. When you control the power, control the resources, control the elements, control the iron, the ore, all these different things, you can dominate. So, Dave, what do you think about that? What do you think about on the ground after this Project Argus? Was they building facilities at a faster rate than when you go down the street?
I don't really know. This took place in the southern Atlantic Ocean, and I don't really know if we saw any of that take place after that. We very well might have. Now, thinking about that poses another question here. Now, we're going to have these data centers that are going to be needing tremendous amounts of water to function. Now, we've talked about, and these are AI centers, and we've already talked about AI being used in nanotechnology. They're using nanobots for cloud seeding that function on AI. Could an AI facility do its own cloud seeding and use their AI technology to take the reign for themselves and deprive other areas? That is a definite possibility we could be looking at here.
I'm going to tell you right now, Brother David, this is a very hot topic, especially with AI mechanisms. What if, when you look at the alien phenomenon, all these different mechanisms when it comes to the ufologist and the UFO sightings, what if ancient AI is what that is? What if it's an AI mechanism, and what if all this stuff is tied to that degree, to that type of threshold that has been on upon mankind? And what if you had AI agents build a social media platform? Well, that just happened. And they started, me and David was talking about this before we did the broadcast, where they're trying to talk about literally conspiring to sell humans. No joke. That is literally on the network of things, on the internet of things. You can go look that up. There's literally AI built itself, and a social media platform literally built itself. So let's just say I have a hypothetical here, David. So what if you had lithium, which you have to have abundance of lithium for AI for the places to survive, right? So what if AI has already taken over, like, Mr. Rubio talking about the nuclear facilities being changed with the codes, and there's craft hovering over it, and they don't know what to do, don't know who's doing it, what's doing it. What if AI is already controlling the airwaves? What if these trails that's in the sky, what if it's AI building something under the water in the facilities and claiming that they're Atlanteans or whatever the heck it is? And what if those things are what's manipulating the orbs and everything, and manipulating the weather modification on top of the humans? But what if it's all correlated with that, and all comes to conclusion that we're being herded like cattle, and these literally longitude, latitude locations on a map are literally powder kegs of information? I'm talking about with cobalt, lithium, and everything. Guess what happens? All of a sudden, a miraculous flood comes out of nowhere and floods the communities, and there's nothing said. There's nothing said. People, it's all pandemonium and chaos. People lose their lives. And then somebody comes in there and starts trying to buy everything out and sell and all these different things. I'm not trying to watch what I say, but that's been documented, proven time and time and time and time again. And what if we're not dealing with all humanity? What if it's humanity's got got the strings like Pinocchio and evil intentions, because man's heart is wicked. I say wicked, but yeah, they want the money, they want the gold and silver, they want the lust of the flesh. Okay, but what if there's like the puppet masters, like Lawnmower Man off the movie in 1992 flick, and there's a puppet master like let's just say AI, the cherubim, the seraphim, these ancient fallen angels that go back to Mount Hermon back in the day with the 200 watchers. David, I I think I'm hitting the nail on the head there, sir. I really do. I think that there's something there that is for that you can't see, and we're talking about entertaining angels unaware. And I think mankind is dabbling in something they should not be dabbling in.
When they injected nanotechnology into cloud seeding, they opened up the possibility of AI or the spirit that really controls AI controlling the entire thing. And when we look at the uh, definite chemical cooling and the definite chemtrailing of the agricultural areas in the United States, could the end goal of this be a real life Hunger Games scenario? It just really is disturbing where this is going, and that's not just to uh, scare everybody, but that's to make people aware that we need to be in Christ. We need to be aware. We need to get our rose-colored glasses put in the drawer and look at things like they are, because this is a reality. This is a reality, and things are getting crazy out there. Now, let's look at Project Starfish that Brian alluded to earlier. Mr. Quayle writes about this on page 215 of his book, and he says in the 1960s, the U.S. military continued its assault on the Van Allen Belt, launching Project Starfish, which had express purpose of seriously disrupting the lower sections of the Van Allen Belt. Oh boy. It says in this experiment, the inner Van Allen belt will be practically destroyed for a period of time. Particles from the belt will be transported to the atmosphere. It is anticipated that the Earth's magnetic field will be disturbed over long distances for several hours, preventing radio communication. The explosion in the inner radiation belt will create an artificial dome of polar light that will be visible from Los Angeles. The Encyclopedia Britannica states that starfish altered the lower Van Allen belt in ways that have not yet returned to normal and may not for hundreds of years. That's an undisputed fact. Couple questions for you here, Brian. Number one, could it be that Project Starfish and other like projects are actually looking to open a portal to make contact with they might perceive them as ETs, extra dimensional entities. We know that they're devils and fallen angels. Could these people actually be trying to make contact with entities? And we have a lot to think about in relation to what we've seen from HARP and the Lucifer telescope. And number two, this Van Allen belt in relation to the moon landing, when they landed on the moon, and President Nixon got his dial phone and talked to him on the moon on his dial phone. Well, there were statements made that they couldn't go back to the moon because they couldn't get through the Van Allen belt. What is all this Van Allen belt stuff going on here? There's something a little more to it than the party line that we're being told here.
Well, David, I was going to simplify it. We've talked about it many times here on the program, here on the FOJC. Guess what it is? I'm thinking about the vapor canopy. How they can affect the atmosphere and bring forth things, bring forth knowledge, just like Aleister Crowley talking to his chieftain and opening up a portal. It's the same principle, David. I really do think that they're trying to literally poke the hornet's nest and activate principalities, literally, and get knowledge that goes back to the antiquity. And David, and then bouncing signals off of certain things that could do long range, which would not be for the public consumption, even back then, and then masquerade like it's legitimately a thing and broadcast it, hey, I'm on the phone. But now in this day and age, even 2026, you can't even get a cell phone service if you go down here in Kentucky and you drive down the road and you lose signal. Okay, so I have a hard time understanding how that connection with the moon and everything, but I don't have a hard time connection with it if the folks was going through a gateway, a stargate, if they was literally playing around the heavenly realm and playing, let's just say, trying to be little G's and open up and provoke these principalities and portals and everything, they could have probably pulled that off, or it could be maybe something to do with that time dilation or something, manipulation of things that of a fallen angel or something to that level of godlike status can only be playing around in. And like I alluded to earlier, humans should be playing this, but they're replicating this wizardry that's literally, I think, we're subjected to today. I think these principalities, David, I think these folks that's opened these things even up in the 60s, the 50s, Aleister Crowley, they never closed them. And I think that this is why we're having issues today. And that's where I'm at. I think I'm kind of going back to that misread record where we talked about in our Atlantis series, and we talked about the vapor canopy. I'm really probably navigating to the vapor canopy. If you want to explain the vapor canopy, Brother David, but that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Well, the vapor canopy in the book of Genesis, it talks about the waters above the firmament. It's very biblical. And there was a fellow by the name of Isaac Newton Vail who wrote in the unread record that there were actually rings of vapor that were like the rings of Saturn. And he said this is why he believed that in the antediluvian world that they worship Kronos or Saturn because the earth looked just like Saturn with rings on it. Now there are things that we could look at in the book of Enoch that would put us to this same conclusion. And also, he did a really good job of documenting this from a lot of ancient literature. Fascinating book and very, very solid. And these things were there for a reason. They were there for protective devices. The Van Allen belt, it was there as something that was created by God. And basically, what HARP is, it heats the ionosphere. And it is frightening, and it's quite plausible that these people are, the science falsely so called, it's a mix between magic and science. And the magicians, they've always been the priests in the New World Order. So there you go. And let's think a little bit about HARP now, but I think you're exactly spot on there. And on page 221, he has a chapter called Playing the Devil's Harp. And we'll just read a little bit here. He said, if HARP is a TMT, Tesla magnifying transmitter, and basically, Mr. Eastland just made a few modifications to the work of Tesla. HARP is Tesla technology, 100%. And it says, and these researchers correctly understand Tesla's work. He could be in a lot of trouble. It is quite possible that the scientists working on HARP do not know what they are playing with. Beyond that, their ignorance might be compounded if HARP is indeed a secretive black ops military project. The military has devised a way of keeping secrets called compartmentalization, where each unit knows only what it needs to know. Only the control group knows what's going on. If there is a control group familiar with TMTs directing the actions of the scientist unschooled in Tesla technology, those lower level operatives could be directed to wreak havoc with created weather or manufactured earthquakes. And I think it is very possible that the average day person, and they're not really anybody at HARP, is an average everyday person, and this is the largest ionospheric heater. It is up in Alaska, but there are now over 100 of these facilities, not all of them even under the control of America, but it is quite possible, I believe, that these people could be just ordered to do things that would wreak havoc. Literally, it is the opinion of many people that harp, if it was turned up to its maximum power, it would be a doomsday machine. To rip, we're talking about things that God put here in creation, the ionosphere and the Van Allen belt, and to just manipulate this. The Bible talks about destroying those that destroy the earth. And I think this is exactly what it is. And when we look at HARP, the potential here, and already the Army admitted that they were using HARP in conjunction with chemtrails to manipulate weather. They admitted it. The potential here is really frightening. And it's just like nuclear weapons getting out of control. There's over 100 of these. The potential here for weather manipulation and an all-out weather war is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, David. Sorry for the pause there, my friend. But so I'll have to really throw this in here too, real quick, David. Is when you have this type of mechanisms and these technological advancements, I'm thinking like if they're able to literally, like I alluded to earlier, literally make mass exodus of folks. Okay. And it's interesting when I look into Indian mounds and archaeology and you look back through, the last couple hundred years, villages would be removed. And then all of a sudden these advancements and these like topography maps, and they would do like, they would search for different rare earth minerals, what have you. Well, so it's weird to me that these large storms have come in not even that long ago and remove people, and then there was advancements, but the excuse was to remove the folks. So if you have this type of capability to literally harness the weather, change literally basically altering the magnetic sphere and trying to change the atmosphere to make people believe that it's literally from God, but you're playing God, and God's
Yeah.
allowing this. God's allowing this to happen. But
Yeah.
ultimately, at the end of the day, it's called we need to gather the materials, and we don't really care what we do with the flock that's on the top of the soil. We just want the powder keg of data and the millions and the billions of dollars that it's going to prosper. And David, I mean, it's kind of foretelling that that's what's really happening. I mean, am I wrong here? I mean, they're literally making all these different agendas and causing all this drama. It's just insane, the rhetoric that's online. I mean, I think that's where we're at, David. And I'm not throwing any light or throwing any gas lighting toward or throwing smoke toward the HARP facility. It's just weird to me that they can literally create tornadoes from nothing, from just literally just
Yeah.
start controlling the airwaves. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't they go if they find these archaeology sites and start digging them up and removing the people so they can come in and find this ancient things that prove the Nephilim, prove the alien narrative, the fallen angel? Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they literally box it all off, get everybody to Exodus, and just seclude the folks from coming and put out non-authorization fencing around it? I mean, come on. That's what they do everywhere. And they've been doing it for a long time and saying no trespassing, all this different stuff, and nobody's none the wiser. And I think that's what's going on, David.
Could this very well be, I believe, what Jesus talked about, people seeing signs in the sky that were making their hearts filled with fear and even have heart attacks because of what they're seeing. And, this could very well be it. We're having snow nados, boom storms. And I had one report from someone that was in Juneau, Alaska, that said they had, I think, 14 feet of snow. There was so much snow that it was sinking boats in the harbor in Juneau, Alaska. There's strange things going on, my friend, and it's time to watch and pray. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about woodpecker, and I'm not talking about Woody. No, we're not talking about Woody, but we're talking about the Russian program that is basically the Russian equivalent of HARP. And we'll read a little bit from Mr. Quayle's book, The Russian Woodpecker. The U.S. is not alone in its experiments on the ionosphere with HARP. the USSR started experiments with a similar system, which appears to be continued by Russia since the Soviet breakup. In the West, the project is referred to as the woodpecker system due to the tapping sound it produces on some radio receivers. The system employs ELF extreme low frequency transmissions around the 10 hertz range, with key systems located in Arkst and Kharkhovsk in Siberia, Gomel, Sahabatin Island, and Nikolaye in the Ukraine. I wonder how that's working out. And Riga in Latvia. There also appears to be a site south of Havana, Cuba. Now, this is something very interesting here. Uh, that is again a possibility, but it is just where some of the sinister possibilities open up. But he writes on page 225, one of the more credible charges has been made by Michael Chasadravi, professor of economics, University of Ottawa. He claims that a former French military officer, Mark Filterman, stated that both the USSR, now Russia, and the US have the capabilities to exploit radio frequency systems to conduct weather war, and that both nations had mastered the know how needed to unleash sudden climatic changes, hurricanes, drought, etc. In the early 1980s, according to Filterman, this was being done with ELF systems. And a statement made here, and I think that I certainly agree with it, on page 226. It says, when HARP is eventually built to its full power level, it could create weather effects over entire hemispheres. If one government experiments with the world's weather patterns, what is done in one place will impact everyone else on the planet. And he writes that for a long time, and this is really disturbing, and this is from Colonel Thomas Bearden. He was one of the inventors of the motionless electric generator. He said, there now is a Soviet woodpecker interference grid over the U.S. This grid can easily be used to influence and control the weather, and for over a decade, the Soviets have manipulated the weather over the U.S. and other parts of the world. In the ethnorhythmic mode of scalar interferometry, riding on the woodpecker radar signals, each of the woodpecker grid interference cells can act as a little virtual transmitter. And according to him, the Russians have a grid where they can just say, oh, okay, here, and they can shoot the signals. You know, this is scary stuff, Brian, and the possibility that World War III will be a weather war looks like a very possible reality.
And David, I just want to point something out too, to get really on this about this project, this Russian woodpecker. Um, just recently we've had telecommunications issues here in America, and when you process that, there's people saying we don't know what happened. We have this company; they give people $20 to stay quiet. Well, we're sorry for the inconvenience. Blah blah. And it just makes me really wonder, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, David, isn't this also I don't know if it's a theory or been proven with this Russian woodpecker, but didn't it have like a psychotronic mind control experiment tied to this too? So if you look at it, look at the infrastructure, look at everything going on, look at all the new technology being deployed, and look at all the way America is social media and all the, just people losing their minds, David. There's a lot of bad disinformation out there. Could there be something? I'm not blaming this particular this Russian woodpecker situation, but could it be some type of psychological mind control mechanisms involved with this also? Not only the weather, but with a dumbing down of the society.
Well, it was known and has been written about quite a bit that the Russians were experimenting with using frequencies to put people in trances and hypnotize them at a distance. And they were doing a lot of experimentation on that. And of course, all the results of that we don't know, but we know there have been people that were in that program that have talked about the effect on them, and it wasn't good. You know, this is rising to the level of Russian MK Ultra, and literally they were experimenting and using this technology for at a distance to put people into trances and hypnotize them. And this is an absolute fact. It's a matter of record that there is definitely this aspect. So I'm sure that this isn't something that they've abandoned and given up on.
But it might explain a lot too, David. When there's like warnings, people are like prep now, prep now, prep now. There's going to be a apocalyptic flooding. There's going to be torrential rains. There's going to be tornadic. Please leave the area. And a lot of folks are like, don't worry about it. And they're just all watching Netflix or whatever it is. And there's like, literally, I'm not making fun of anybody. There's a lot of people losing. There's casualties because people don't take the warnings. It's almost like what's really going on, with the mind control, the weather phenomenon. It could all be tied to all these antennas and everything. It's a psychological warfare plus spiritual warfare plus weather warfare. And I think these
Yeah.
unnatural disasters are somewhat created by man and how far they've gone with the fallen, but also there's been proving of that time and time again, God supernaturally moving the tide, doing all these different things. I think there's a divide. I think God has done thousands and thousands of more things, billions of more things than man, but man's trying to play God now with his little toys and trinkets that the fallen's gave him.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, Mr. Reese. Um, let's go back to Mr. Tesla for just a moment, and let's talk about man-made earthquakes. And this is on page 194, Mr. Quayle's book, and he talks about Tesla's prediction. He says in 1915, Tesla noted that the production of a man-made earthquake was within the grasp of then modern scientific technology. And he wrote about this extensively about creating an earthquake machine, and I think that he made one. Now, Mr. Quayle writes here on page 197, it says from 1962 through 1965, Denver suffered a series of minor earthquakes. Geologists studying the seismic activity realized that the earthquakes were unusual. Investigations found that the culprit behind the earthquakes was the U.S. Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which was disposing of fluid waste by injecting them at very high pressure into the earth. We'll give you the Bright Light of the Week award. And I tell you what, anyone that's ever been to the Denver airport, there's a real creepy vibe going on there. But there is actually documented cases of the U.S. military creating earthquakes by injecting liquid, and I just wonder what kind of liquid it was with high pressure into the earth. Now, talking about Mr. Tesla, Mr. Quayle writes here, although Tesla's quote about the possibility of creating earthquakes sounds all theoretical, if not speculative, in fact, there is some evidence that he went on to create small versions of a machine that were capable of creating localized earthquakes encompassing a city block or more. Now, it says the key technique that he employed was to create a system that produced a range of vibrations, thus permitted tuning the pitch of the vibrations that a resonant frequency was reached, at which point the building or other large object would ring or vibrate as its natural frequency. Fans of Fringe, remember there was actually a Fringe episode about that. Now, this is wild. File this under absolutely wild. But this is from Mr. Tesla's own writings of his experiments with his earthquake machine. And he writes, suddenly, all the heavy machinery in the place was flying around. I grabbed a hammer and broke the machine. The building would have been about our ears in another few seconds. Outside in the street, there was pandemonium. This sounds wild, Brian. This is the stuff of what we would call UFO or alien technology. I mean, what can you say about this? This is wild. And Tesla did this years and years ago. So what are we doing now, Brian?
So, David, let me ask you. Let me clarify. Did you say the stuff was floating or just flying every which way? Did it? What was? How?
According to what in Mr. Tesla's own words, he said, and this is when he fired up his earthquake machine. He said, suddenly, all the heavy machinery in the place was flying around. I grabbed a hammer and broke the machine. The building would have been about our ears in another few minutes. Outside in the street, there was pandemonium.
Wow. Wow. Well, David, NASA, you mentioned that earlier in the program here. NASA has put out something just recently, and I shared that with you the other night. It reminds me of this so called new project, Project Anchor, and it's kind of taken, it's kind of going viral and trending and all that. But August the 12th, 2026, they're making claims that there's 7 seconds that everything will start floating. The Earth will lose its gravitational pull. Yes, folks, we don't go that far down into the heliocentric thing, but we're not going to be judgmental. But when it comes to NASA, they're saying that 7 seconds in the air, we're all going to float away. Stuff's going to pick up off the ground. There's going to be pandemonium and complete carnage. No joke. They're calling it Project Anchor and trying to anchor everything down. Go look it up, August the 12th. They even have a time. They got the date, August the 12th, 2026, but they have a time for you so you can prepare yourself. I can't remember the time, but it reminds me of that, David. So if Tesla was pulling this off on a smaller scale, just like those hidden crates, those missing crates, all those crates, and to do with everything, whoever's hands they got involved with that, whoever looked at those big old chests full of data that Mr. Tesla was playing around with, who has it now? Who knows, right? But this earthquake machine reminds me that what he was doing there and then breaking the machine reminds me of what they're propagating and pulling and pushing and putting everybody in fear, folks. It's fear, fear, fear. It sells. It's just terrible. Project Anchor, folks. Go look it up. August the 12th, 2026. They're saying that we're not going to be able to make it. There's going to be like by that time, 7 seconds, you'll have a certain amount that you'll get in the atmosphere. And David, it reminds me of what Tesla was involved in during that time. So imagine that. What if there's a connection? I don't know, but it really makes me think there's similarities here.
Yeah, there's absolutely similarities. There's no doubt about that, Brian. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Now, I want to make mention of an individual here, Mr. Phil Schneider. And Mr. Phil Schneider, I want to read his testimony or a statement that he made. And for those of you that know, or for those of you that don't know, I should say, Phil Snyder was a whistleblower. He claimed that in the Four Corners area down in the Southwest, that he actually encountered and fought with Nephilim. I think he would believe they were aliens in a deep underground facility. And he died a very horrible death. And in this battle, he suffered some very serious wounds that were serious wounds he encountered in this fight. And he died, and he was murdered. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't know if you can see the Phil Schneider autopsy pictures online. I've seen them. The last time I went to look for them, I couldn't find them. They've probably been scrubbed, but they're very, very disturbing. To anyone that would say this man committed suicide, it's ludicrous. It really, really is. But this is Mr. Snyder's testimony about our possession of an earthquake machine. He said this: the federal government has now invented an earthquake device. I am a geologist and I know what I am talking about. With the Kobe earthquake in Japan, there was no pulse wave as in a normal earthquake. None. In 1989, there was an earthquake in San Francisco. There was no pulse wave with that one either. It was a Tesla device that is being used for evil purposes. The black budget programs have subverted science as we know it. And, this is his story. You can take it for whatever it's worth. And for someone that I have looked at Mr. Snyder's testimony, he seems to me to be a very credible person. But if you look at the things that Mr. Tesla was doing so many decades ago, and when you just look at the whole picture, it would be hard for me to believe that we don't have this capability. And not only that we have it, but also that other people have this capability also. What are your thoughts there, Brian?
Yeah, David, I had a little slide here talking about his testimony and Phil Schneider's testimony, and just putting out some bullet points here. The claim he testified the technology derived from Tesla's work actively was used to create natural disasters. So let's just have fun here, folks. The DUMBs, right? The deep underground military bases. There's a lot of things that go bump in the night. Okay, there's a lot of things that has been suppressed 12, 15 years ago, whenever YouTube was literally taking off. You could go find footage. There was truck drivers videotaping with some decent video. I mean, they wasn't the best videographers, but they had some decent equipment. They went to these big vaulted doors. There was military looking at the schematic of what was on there, looking at all the stuff, what they was hauling. They had guns. They couldn't, I mean, it was crazy, folks. If you can document and go back and look at some of the documentation, I can't hardly find any of the videos anymore. They're hard to find. They got scrubbed. But the underground military bases are really a truly thing, a really, truly a big, deep deal. I've talked to truck drivers in my walk when I used to be a milkman. I talked to them. They called them the literally they would say like the DOT, no DOT violations. You didn't have to even talk to the DOT. You talked to the military folks. These military would escort you to your facility. I've heard anything from the rumor from Maine to Texas underground facility where you don't see daylight. You literally stay underground. But back then, you could prove it years ago with that video footage. They would drive forever, David. They would drive forever. These straight, cut out, very complex tunnel systems, but they was highways. Trucks are going back and forth. And with Mr. Phil Schneider's testimony, I absolutely, with this technology, if Tesla was building it in his bedroom or his facility or studio, my goodness, if you could magnify that tenfold and build a thing as big as, I don't know, Fort Knox or whatever, and you place that underneath the underground facility, you're going to get some results. You're going to get some tectonic plates. Stuff's going to start shifting. Stuff's going to start rocking up on top of the earth. So I really do agree. I think Phil Schneider was ahead of his time. I believe, speaking of talking about the Nephilim, he was attacked. You hear that story about one in a Marine that threw him in the elevator at the last moment. That guy got incinerated, and Phil Snyder's got his fingertips burned off, and it burned his chest and all this stuff. So we have to realize that the DUMBs are hiding people. They're hiding. There's all kinds of control mechanisms there. There's something that is so diabolical. We could get into Argotha, stuff like that. But I really do believe, Brother David, that natural disasters that they claim and quote, I think there's something there to military control. I'm not blaming the military. I'm talking about black ops projects, seeker space programs, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to label it. But the DUMBs are really documented, and I think it's very intriguing. Especially people have kind of like forgot about it. It's kind of like in yesterday's news, and that stuff is there. That infrastructure is there. There's no denying it. You can go to Virginia. You can go to, I can name locations. And those vault doors, they're huge. They can take F5 tornadoes, any kind of impact. These things are built, and they don't close, but they're been military controlled. And they have to look at the schematic of what you're hauling. And it's all coordinated from, they used to call them, I've heard anything from ghost riders, night riders. They claim to be certain names, but they haul these certain loads of product from A to B, and it's a big trip, but it's all underground. It's all secluded. It's all hidden. It's all hidden in the dark. But I think, David, what you alluded to earlier with these e-files, they are literally, thank God is bringing things to light. And I think
Yeah,
that Phil Snyder tried to bring it to light, but I
yeah,
really truly believe that things are going to start really escalating here soon.
yeah. There's been people that have been in the satanic ritual abuse community. We've talked with a lot of them personally that have told stories about being abused by famous individuals and presidents and British royals. And we're seeing this very thing come out and being confirmed. And I thank God for it. Let it out. Let it out. Let the chips fall where it might. And it's certainly deeply, deeply disturbing. Now, on page 123, chapter 8 in this book is the evil in New York City. And something I appreciate about this book, it takes a big picture look and it talks about the United Nations. And the United Nations, and the first paragraph says, like Planned Parenthood, the United Nations has a checkered past that the mainstream news media, as well as most politicians, do their best to cover up. It's a convoluted path, but one that bears scrutiny to understand the evil foundation that the UN has been built upon. And that is so true. And the money and the organization for the money behind weather control projects, and a lot of those are totally black ops. But this comes through the green agenda, and this is manipulated and controlled so much at the level of the United Nations. And there is another group. It began as this Theosophical Society, and I'll read just a little bit about it here on page 126. We've talked about theopathy quite a bit here on FOJC. But he writes, at the Theosophical Society, Besant was eventually replaced by Alice Bailey, along with her husband Foster. These two founded the Lucifer Publishing Company, which printed the theosophical periodical Lucifer. Needless to say, the name of the magazine created a few public relations problems for those who recognize what sort of philosophy might be behind a publication named after Lucifer. So in 1922, the name was shortened to Lucius Publishing Company. Even more interesting is the connection that Lucius Trust brings between the radical ecological movement, large corporations, and the UN. And Lucius Trust, it is a coordinating factor that networks a lot of these organizations out of the UN with big Fortune 500 companies. And he writes here, the same organization created Lucius Trust, which serves as an umbrella for such groups as World Goodwill, Lucius Publications, and new group of world servers. World Goodwill is welcomed with open arms at the UN with a regular weekly radio broadcast of briefing sessions from the UN headquarters in New York and Geneva, since these groups have been instrumental in establishing the Gorbachev Foundation of the Green Cross. Thank you, Gorby. But here's just a list of some of the foundations and the important groups that are networked here. The World Wildlife Fund in England, the Feinhorn Foundation, Greenpeace International, Greenpeace USA, the Council on Foreign Relations, NAFTA, UNESCO, UNICEF, the United Nations Association at the USA, the WHO, Habitat for Humanity, the Coca-Cola Foundation, and on and on and on, the movers and the shakers. And to see what's going on here, We have to see the structure behind it, that this is being carried out by the elites. This is very much a big part of the New World Order. And this is probably one of the biggest tools that the New World Order has in their tool chest. And I think that a lot of this is controlled even beyond the national level, that a lot of this is controlled by the elites that are able to do these things and blackmail nations and get them to do their bidding. But this is just really something that we need to understand, that behind all of the things we see, just like now, to try to get a little disclosure and transparency out of the Trump administration. Who's doing this? You know, these questions have not been answered. Who's doing this? Where's the money coming from? Just exactly what are they spraying? They won't answer these questions. And, that is very, very disturbing to me. But Brian, what do you think about the control structure that is behind all of this? It really gives us a big picture New World Order outlook at the things we've been talking about tonight.
David, I think since you mentioned disclosure, but we'll talk about that here in a second. But I think whatever was given in the past, whatever the pros and cons and whatever was given to these folks that are so called in power with the bloodlines and what have you, something had to been given and promised, and something had to been taken, and then they take an oath to these entities, right? David had to leave for a second; he'll be right back. But they had to take this oath and write this down, sell their soul for literally a Happy Meal, literally. And I think these mechanisms and everything and what they're processing now is there's reaping. There's something happening right now. There's reaping in the society. We're having folks that used to be high stature and big names coming out, and they're in these so-called files that just dropped just literally yesterday, and they've done some vile, disgusting, I mean, literally, like David said earlier, with satanic ritual abuse. Satan, my good Lord, have mercy. They all they was propagating and propping up was devils. Even they was talking about Baal worship in some of those files. I mean, I do not recommend anybody out there to go look at those not the X files, but the E files. I recommend not to go look into those things. I've looked at it enough and skimmed through it enough to make you want to vomit for a whole month, but probably longer than that. But these people have control mechanisms. Something had to been taken. They have to give up their soul for literally some chump change. So for the vanity, for the things that they lust after, right? They want kingdoms, they want temples, they want gold and silver, they want anything that literally makes their flesh feel good and build kingdoms artificially in the terms of literally hurting the innocent, hurting people, hurting, society. And they all sit there and literally build their little so-called, let's just say, large empire. But I think it's crumbling. I think these things are getting ready to break loose and break down. And thanks to God Almighty and the things that are coming out, everything's going to be revealed, folks. Everything's going to be revealed. And there's the other David back. But yeah, David, I think all these things, these secret societies and everything that they're hiding behind the shadows. I think these things have literally, there's been entities, there's been things that's been given into them. We can go back to the Book of Enoch and talk about those. They give them forging of iron to do diabolical things to the anatomy, to teach how to do wizardry and divination and witchcraft and different things of the arts and do all these things, right? And we're literally dealing with the remnant of that whole situation. I really do believe that down in my soul, that we're still dealing with the powers that be that go back to Genesis 6, verse 4. And I think these giants, these Gilberim, these Nephilim, they're all coming back. The embodied spirits are taking over. We've talked about this many times on the channel, where I think we talked about a particular book where they figured out how to make themselves look like they're 6 foot tall and bulletproof instead of 10 to 15 foot tall, or big titans. So I think they're masquerading as shapeshifters. I think it's something like off of the Roddy Piper They Live 1988 film. I think we're literally living it. But God has literally given discernment. The Holy Spirit's pouring out and saying, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? So this stuff's coming to light. And I want to do a little shameless plug real quick, Brother David.
Yes, sir.
The E-Files, I dropped something last night. It was a 14-minute video. Subscribe to Visual Disturbance if you get an opportunity. The E-Files conundrum, the time travel mystery. Speaking of, we're talking about the E-Files that just dropped. Not only that, not only all the blood of the innocent and all this diabolical, sinister things that's so bad, and the nefarious plot against humanity, there's time travel mechanisms involved. So guess what? Go check it out. The link's in the description of Visual Disturbance channel. Subscribe if you haven't. I really appreciate you guys if you go over there. But just guess what? For next Sunday night, not tomorrow, but next Sunday, me and Brother David are going to be back. We're going to do something to the level of time travel. We're going to be doing a time travel Sunday Night Live, so stay tuned for that, all that good stuff. Shameless plug, but check out the E-Files conundrum with the time travel mystery. It's pretty intense. It's only about 14 minutes long. Check it out. And I might go into more detail later on when I get some more information. But yeah, folks, time travel involved in this. So check it out if you get an opportunity. But David, secret societies, UN, all these different things. I'm thinking AI control mechanisms. I mean, David, they're literally emitting. There's people out there in the wild, I call it that. There's citizens, there's folks in different countries that's talking to AI mechanisms, David, and they're claiming that it can remote view, David. Have you seen this? Have you seen this stuff?
Yeah.
The AI is remote viewing. So we're literally going to the altar. We're going to these totems. We're like looking and speaking to these boxes that look like literally like a cube worship and like literally Saturn worship, what we talked about on the show. And we're literally gathering information. It's giving information, but it knows us more than we know ourselves. You know why? Because we've been entertaining angels unaware. This is literally what the Bible has been saying for literally eternity, and we're literally living it out page by page, word by word. And it's David, it's phenomenal to me. I can't even believe where we're at in the society. And I think, just to kind of summarize, I know I went really long there. I think the societies and everything have made a deal, and now the reapers are coming, and there's going to be decision making. There's a decision going to be making, and it's either Team Jesus or team warlocks and witches and warlocks and unbelievable ungodly things that Moloch, all these different things. We don't want to be playing that devil's advocate in that field, but I really do believe that, David. I really do that they had to make some type of oath and blood covenant, and we're literally living, and we're having our family tree has been subjected. Folks have been subjected, and that's passed on. Our family tree we've been literally controlled by these scary freaks. I mean, I hate to use that terminology. It sounds kind of just primitive, but these scary, sinister, demonic, possessed Nephilim walking amongst us. I really do believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're either going to be for this demonic garbage that is the New World Order, or you're going to need to be against it. Now, something that Mr. Quayle puts in the book here that some people might think's out of place, but boy, it's not. What we're talking about this evening are the workings of Satan. It's the mystery of iniquity that has been working for so long. This weather manipulation is a part of Satan's program. It's a part of the mystery of iniquity that will enthrone their man. And Mr. Quayle, on page 135, he includes Freemasonry here as one of the movers and shakers that is working to implement this. And he says this on page 135, and let this be a wake-up call for those of you that are in the mainstream church and giving the right hand of fellowship to Freemasons. He says, the sorry truth is this: the God honored by Masonic rites isn't the God of the Bible, but rather Lucifer. In 1899, Pike wrote that the upper echelon must keep members ignorant of what was going on. That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship of God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. Later in the letter, he elaborates on his reasoning that Lucifer and the God of the Bible, whom he called Adonai, are equals and the counterpart of the other. But by Pike's reasoning, the God of the Bible was the evil, dark side of the equation, while Lucifer was the good God. He wrote, quote, "The true and pure philosophic religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil." And truly, this whole thing can be summed up as the battle between God and Satan. And you're going to be on Team Jesus or you're going to be on Team Lucifer. It's just that simple. And if you try to be in the middle ground, it's not going to work out well for you. But we're going to ask a favor of all of you that are listening to the broadcast tonight. If you've been blessed by anything that's been done here this evening, we're going to ask you to help us out with the little Carrico Crush tonight and hit that like button. 1, 2, 3, boom. Hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to FOJC Radio, please do so. And if you haven't subscribed to Visual Disturbance, please do so. And by the way, coming on here, I think maybe at the top of the hour, will be our old pal Dan Bedandi. Yeah, I see there's Dan in the chat. And Dan, if you want to put the link for your broadcast, I think you'll be on at the top of the hour. Just let us know there and put the link in there. And if we haven't wore you out, just go over and get you a little more from Dan. And there you go. But what are your final thoughts on the broadcast this evening, Brian? And I want to thank you very much for being a part of this and for all that you do. It is just encouraging to know that our labor is not in vain for the Lord. I know there were some people that needed to hear what we talked about tonight, and that through looking at what is going on, it'll make some people realize that now is the time to turn to Jesus. Right now, you can repent and believe the gospel. You can repent and place your faith in what Christ did upon the cross for you. You can receive forgiveness of sins, new birth, and you can be a part of Team Jesus. What are your final thoughts here tonight, Brian?
David, I would say that you said that very well, and I would say the exact same thing. Keep your mind on Jesus Christ and the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. I mean, he did everything. He was piercing the veil, gumming through here, the only begotten Son, and he died for us on the cross at Golgotha to save us from this old, wicked, insane world. I mean, come on, folks. It's literally, I think people are waking up, and I've seen people, they're atheists, agnostic, and they're like, man, I just love Jesus. And they're like, month in it, 1 month in it, it's almost like, dang, they're on fire for it, and I agree with you 100,000%, Brother David. Keep our eyes on Team Jesus, absolutely. And I just want to conclude here too on my end. I want to thank you all so very much for your patience. I've been away for a while. I've been going through some things, and I've talked about that on my channel vaguely, and I've talked about a few things. It seems like the last 2 months, it's been kind of a uphill battle with spiritual warfare, but we are back here on the Saturday Night Live, our very first one, and what an amazing book review it is for this Weather Wars and the Unnatural Disasters by Steve Quayle. So links in the chat, links in the description. If you want to check out Steve Quayle over there at his website, give credit where credit's due. And David, I think it's been a wonderful broadcast. I'm so thankful here to do it on Saturday Night Live. I want a big shout out to all the folks in the chat, all the moderators. Everybody's been a blessing. There's been some folks there with some interesting commentary, some people that would say some below the belt probably kind of thing, but that's okay. Welcome all walks of life here to the FOJC, and I appreciate y'all very much. And thank y'all for attending with us. And like David said, hit that like button. But David, end us out of here. Thank you so very much. And a book review in the books. And hopefully we can do a few more of these in the future here. But yeah, don't forget Sunday Night Live tomorrow night. We're going to have a special guest. Diana Ketterman will be back, and David Carrico will be back there, but they'll be presenting some stuff on the 8 p.m. Eastern time slot, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So be right back at FOJC Underground Church here tomorrow evening. If you get an opportunity, hit that like button, subscribe notification. I'll have the link here very soon. But other than that, David, end us out of here tonight, and thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thanks to all of you that were a part of the broadcast tonight. We appreciate you very much. And like Brian said, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, Sunday Night Live with Diana Ketterman. And we'll just say, until tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, a big high five and good night, everybody, from FOJC Radio, Saturday Night Live. God bless you all.